Justin Trudeau's stepping down as leader of the Liberal Party.
Yeah, quite the shakeup.
Yeah, and I mean, we know resignations happen in politics all the time, right?
Yeah.
But this one feels a little different, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I mean, you've got the internal party dynamics. There's been some rumblings about clashes within the party. And then you've got the whole potential power vacuum, like who's going to step in and what does this mean for the upcoming election?
Yeah, and speaking of the election, I mean, that's another layer to this whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
It feels like an election could be just around the corner, and this resignation throws a whole other wrench into things.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting here is it's not just about Trudeau leaving.
Right.
It's about what his departure tells us about the state of the Liberal Party itself.
Yeah. Okay, so let's break down Trudeau's announcement a bit. He's resigning as party leader, but he's going to stay on as prime minister until they choose a replacement.
Right.
I mean, that's not exactly how we usually see these things play out, right?
Yeah, that's definitely unusual.
Yeah.
It creates kind of this weird in-between period where he's technically still in charge, but everyone's kind of looking ahead to who's next.
Right.
And the opposition parties are definitely going to try to take advantage of this situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're seeing an opportunity here for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's the whole Chrystia Freeland thing.
Yeah.
I mean, her resignation as deputy PM back in December was a huge surprise.
Total bombshell, yeah.
Like, where did that come from?
Right. And we still don't really know the full story there, do we?
No, it's very hush-hush.
Yeah, very much so.
She did thank Trudeau for his service on social media later on, but that doesn't really tell us what happened between them, right?
No, it doesn't really shed any light on what caused that rift.
So was this a sign of things to come, or was it just a totally separate issue? It's hard to say.
It really is, yeah.
Okay, so we've got this resignation and all this mystery surrounding it. And then Trudeau prorogues Parliament.
Yeah.
Help me out here. And for someone who's maybe not super familiar with Canadian politics, what does that even mean?
So imagine hitting the pause button on all the work that Parliament's doing.
Okay.
That's basically what prorogation is.
Okay.
All the debates, the bills, everything just gets put on hold.
Wow, so everything just grinds to a halt.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Now, Trudeau says he's doing this to hit the reset button, try to lower the political temperature.
Okay.
But some people are saying this is actually a way to avoid a potential no-confidence vote.
Ah, I see.
Which could have triggered an election.
So a strategic maneuver, perhaps?
Could be,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting.
It's like a clever move, for sure.
Yeah. And, I mean, you got to think about the timing of all this, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This prorogation, it also marks the end of the longest minority parliament session in Canada's history.
In Canadian history. Yeah, that's got to be significant, right?
I mean, that's got to say something about the state of things.
It really does, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about Trudeau's side of things. But what about the other parties? How are they reacting to all this drama?
Well, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, he's seeing this as a real opportunity. He's calling for an election right away, saying that changing the leader of the Liberal Party isn't actually going to change anything substantial.
So he's basically saying the Liberals are a sinking ship no matter who's at the helm.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And what about the other parties? What are they saying?
So the Bloc Québécois leader, Yves-François Blanchet, he's on the same page, wants an election, and he's saying that the Liberals just can't be trusted inherently.
Interesting. Okay, so both of them are pushing for an election.
Yeah.
And what about Jagmeet Singh over at the NDP?
So Singh, he's been pretty critical of Trudeau's record, and he's basically saying that the NDP is going to vote against the Liberals on any confidence votes in the future.
So they're going to try to force an election too?
Yeah, essentially pushing for an election sooner rather than later.
Okay, so we've got three major parties all pushing for an election. Sounds like a recipe for gridlock.
Could be, yeah.
And then you've got the possibility of a spring election on top of all of that.
Right.
Which would give whoever takes over from Trudeau very little time.
Yeah, very little time to make their mark.
Before facing the voters.
Exactly.
So much pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to, I think, the big question here. Who is going to replace Trudeau?
Right. Who will step into those shoes?
I mean, this Liberal leadership race is going to be a fascinating one to watch.
Absolutely.
So much at stake.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of Trudeau's legacy. I mean, he's leaving behind a pretty complicated picture, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely a lot of layers there.
Some highs, some lows.
For sure.
And I think that's what makes this whole thing so intriguing.
Absolutely.
You've got a departing leader with a mixed record, this leadership race that's about to heat up
Yeah.
and the possibility of a spring election throwing everything into even more chaos.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
For sure.
All right, so we've laid some groundwork here,
Yeah. Yeah.
but now we need to dig into the leadership race itself.
I think so.
We need to look at who the potential contenders are,
Yeah.
what their strengths and weaknesses are, and really what kind of vision they have for Canada.
Absolutely.
That's where things, I think, are really going to get interesting.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got this leadership race about to kick off.
Mm-hmm.
What are the key things we should be watching for as this all unfolds?
Well, I think one of the first things to keep in mind is that the Liberal Party has a very specific process
Right.
for choosing a new leader.
Right.
And it's all happening on a pretty tight timeline, too.
Right. So these potential candidates need to get moving.
Yeah, they need to mobilize quickly
Yeah.
and build support within the party. And it's not just about appealing to the general public, right?
Right. It's got to be about winning over those liberal insiders.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what makes someone a strong contender in this race? I mean, what kind of experience or qualities are we're looking for?
Well, experience is definitely key,
Mm-hmm.
especially having held, a prominent cabinet position.
Okay.
Think finance, defense, foreign affairs.
Right. Those high-profile roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those roles give you visibility and a chance to really prove your leadership skills.
Okay. So experience is important,
Yeah.
but I imagine charisma plays a role too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the Liberals have a history of choosing leaders who can really connect with voters on a personal level.
Right. Someone who can inspire people.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a blend of substance and style, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay. So what about Trudeau himself? I mean, will he try to influence who takes over?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Or is he going to step back completely and let the party decide?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, his endorsement would carry a lot of weight, for sure. But it's also possible he'll choose to stay neutral
Okay.
and just let the party kind of chart its own course.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Too, yeah.
I'm also wondering about the potential impact this change could have on Canada's political landscape.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, will this lead to like a big shift in policy, or will it be more of a continuation of what Trudeau's been doing?
Yeah, that's what everyone's trying to figure out right now.
Right.
I mean, the new leader is going to bring their own priorities to the table, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But they also inherit the legacy of Trudeau's policies, both the good and the bad.
Right, the baggage comes with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's an example of an area where we might see some changes?
We'll take climate change, for instance. Trudeau really made that a central focus of his government.
Mm-hmm.
But a new leader might choose to shift gears a bit,
Okay.
maybe emphasize different aspects of environmental policy.
So there's room for some change there.
Potentially, yeah.
Interesting. And then, of course, whoever takes over
Yeah.
might have to defend those choices in an election pretty quickly.
Right. If we do end up with the spring election, that is...
Yeah, a lot of pressure for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about Trudeau's legacy for a minute. It's complicated, isn't it?
Very complicated, yeah.
He's done some good things during his time in office, but there have definitely been missteps and controversies along the way.
Absolutely.
So on the positive side, what are some of the things that stand out?
Well, his government legalized cannabis.
Right.
They increased the Canada Child Benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And they really championed a lot of progressive social policies.
So some big wins there.
Yeah, definitely.
But then there's the other side of the coin.
Right. And his time in office was also marked by some ethical controversies.
Notably, the SNC-Lavalin affair.
Right.
And he also faced a lot of criticism over his handling of certain issues, like the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion.
Yeah, those were definitely some tough moments.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there's that broken promise on electoral reform,
Oh, right.
which I think still stings for a lot of Canadians
He does, yeah.
who were hoping for a more proportional voting system.
Mhm.
And I think it's just a reminder that even charismatic leaders with good intentions,
Yeah.
sometimes they can fall short of their promises.
It happened.
So ultimately, Trudeau's legacy is going to be debated and analyzed for years to come.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I think what's clear right now is that he leaves behind a changed Canada,
Mhm.
a Canada that's grappling with some pretty big issues.
Yeah, like climate change.
Yeah.
Reconciliation with Indigenous peoples,
Mhm.
the role of technology in our lives.
Big stuff.
Yeah, big complex issues.
So as we kind of shift our focus to the future,
Yeah.
the Liberal Party's at a crossroads.
The choices they make in the coming months are going to have a big impact on the direction of Canadian politics.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a pivotal moment for sure.
It is.